Hi everyone, my name is Julian Warchall and I'm an engineering consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton. I assist a number of government clients with microelectronics work. At DARPA, I help out program manager Serge Leaf with his growing portfolio of integrated circuit design programs. And today I'm excited to present about some of the recent developments and future directions in DARPA-funded open source chip design. So we refer internally to Serge's program portfolio as DASH, which stands for Design, Automation, and Secure Hardware. This slide shows all of the existing DASH programs, along with some program concepts that we have in development. Today, I'll be focusing on the electronic design automation, or EDA, part of the portfolio, talking about some of the ongoing work in the IDEA and POSH programs, and then touching on future directions of open source EDA deployment that may end up being wrapped into a program concept that we call Blue Hat. I'd like to take a moment to point out that Serge's portfolio covers not only EDA, but also hardware security in a few forms, as well as US-based microelectronics efforts. If you'd like more information about any of these programs, they can be found at the DARPA website, which is www.darpa.mil. And they would be under the Microsystems Technology Office banner. So we all know that chip design is a challenge, especially given that we try to keep chip performance in line with Moore's law, which suggests that the product should get 2 times better every 1.5 years. If cars had followed Moore's law, then today a 1965 VW Beetle would be around a micrometer in size and have a top speed approaching the speed of light. To keep up with this incredible design challenge, we've developed computer-based tools to automate much of it for us, which are known as EDA tools. There are 3 big EDA companies today and a few smaller ones, but the smaller companies generally don't have more than $2 million a year in revenue. The small companies are likely to be acquired by one of the big 3 after they explore new markets, since it's difficult for them to attract venture financing on their own to establish sales channels because of the perceived dominance of the big 3. The big 3 are focused on selling their existing tools, and these forces have led to high prices and stagnation of innovation. There haven't been many truly transformative technical advances in EDA since 1988, when Design Compiler first emerged. DARPA is trying to improve access to EDA and fuel advances in EDA tools through strategic government funding in 2 spaces, economics and innovation, that you can see at the bottom of this slide. To address the innovation space, DARPA set out 2 programs, IDEA and POSH, which are both well underway and focus on open source entries into the EDA space. In IDEA, program performers are working on tools for automatic generation of integrated circuits, which are faster and more intelligent than existing tools and create fabrication-ready results without human assistance. In POSH, program performers are putting together a system-on-chip ecosystem of IP building blocks and verification tools that will enable cost-effective design of complex SoCs. Together, IDEA and POSH constitute a chip implementation flow, which is seen at the bottom of this slide. First, you have simulation and verification tools from performers like Sandia, Synopsys, Stanford, and Princeton, which can be used to verify existing IP or design new IP for SoC use. Then synthesis and optimization tools from USC, Michigan, Washington, Yale, and others prepare that IP for ultimate layout and implementation by tools from the likes of UCSD, Minnesota, Utah, and UT Austin. Importantly, all of these tools are open source, and the intent here is to really drive innovation by making them available for iteration and improvement in the open source community. If we look more closely at the distinct efforts in IDEA and POSH, we can assemble them into tool flows. Depicted on this slide is a flow for implementation of an analog design. I know this is a lot to read and it's tough to see during the presentation, but send me an email after and I'll be happy to send you a copy of the slides. The slides have clickable links for each of the tool's GitHub pages, so you can go straight to them. We've highlighted a number of the standout tools, green, going counterclockwise. We have machine intelligence-driven analog netlist optimization tools from USC. We've got mixed signal emulation and analog simulation tools from Synopsys and Sandia National Labs. AI-based analog layout tools from Minnesota and UT Austin, and an SoC assembly tool from Michigan. There's also UCSD's placement and routing tool, which you heard about at this morning's keynote. It's important to point out that it's much more than just place and route. It's actually a whole flow in and of itself. There's a similar flow for implementation of a digital design using tools from the DARPA IDEA and POSH programs. Here you might check your digital IP exhaustively and mathematically for errors using Stanford's formal verification tools, then optimize and synthesize it using Utah's tools, or do an asynchronous design with the Yale tool flow. And finally, you might finish your ASIC with UCSD's tool that we mentioned before, or you might target FPGA using one of Princeton or Utah's tools. All of these things that I've mentioned so far are ready for you to go out and download and use. DARPA is super excited to get people using and contributing to the tools. So a lot of focus is now being put into the second place for strategic government funding that I mentioned earlier, economics. There are some issues with traditional open source EDA tools which prevent everyone from just dropping what they have and moving over and adopting them for all of their work. A few of them are highlighted here. Tools need to be made compatible to fit into pre-existing flows so that people can start to insert them into their workflows. They need to be developed heavily to be easily usable and high quality. They need adequate customer support like professional tools have, and they need distribution channels to create demand and drive tool awareness. The question that we have is, who is going to do this? This is where the blue hat program concept that I mentioned earlier comes in. DARPA might be looking to fund entities which can drive productization, bring business acumen, and offer support services in the open source EDA and chip design ecosystem. Such transition operators would function similarly to how Red Hat does in the Linux space, and they would enable wide adoption of open source chip design tools while staying true to communal open source roots. Such transition operators, we envision, could take many forms depending on how narrow, broad, short, or tall a market they decide to attack initially. Folks ranging from PCB software companies to defense contractors and major cloud providers might all have something to gain from entering the open source EDA realm. DARPA envisions these companies could follow a trajectory similar to the market disruption strategy set forth by Clayton Christensen in his Innovator's Dilemma. Namely, they could start in this low quality of use portion of the market and work up from there. The government ecosystem is currently poorly served by existing tools and in need of advanced technologies, so it would be a good place to start. Addressing their needs, a company might be able to build momentum, move up the chain, and become a good alternative for those working in the defense industrial base, and maybe even those in the commercial market. While this certainly isn't the only approach that might work, we think it's good food for thought. Since the Blue Hat program concept is still in development and nothing is set in stone, we're at a stage where we can throw around all sorts of ideas about the future of open source EDA and how to fund its improvement. If you have any questions or comments about what I presented here, feel free to send me an email at warchall_Julian@bah.com. I'd love to start up a conversation and hear your ideas. Thanks very much for your attention.